Is it for real? This is a question I stumbled upon lately. Is it for real, Barbara? This question was raised during a discussion when I was talking about how women have a harder time developing in the tech industry. I didn't think much of it then. I was convinced that this is an obvious and well-known problem. But this question kept me thinking. Is it only obvious to me? I needed proof, so I did my research. And I looked up statistics from the past years. And to be honest, the numbers struck me. For example, in Europe, there are less than 7% of the tech positions filled by women. And according to Forbes, women leave the tech industry at a 45% higher rate than men. About 84% of the women have been told they are too hard or too soft. And another 60% of the women reported unwanted sexual advance. But true to the motto, I trust no statistics I didn't forge myself. I wasn't convinced yet. This is where I started to think about my own experiences. Getting into tech industry, I had to learn quickly that I needed to get a thick skin and had to put up with insults. Various insults. From, we should better take a pretty woman with us to win this agency pitch, over, you should probably wear a skirt to that important meeting, to, and this one is my absolute favorite, don't you worry your pretty little head about it, just smile, and so on and so forth. I'd like to ask you something. Do you know paper cuts? These tiny little scratches? Anyone? I guess everybody knows them. And know they hurt. Hurt like hell. Just like those insults. They're so small and inconspicuous. Mostly meant to be innocent or maybe even funny. I'd bet the people making them wouldn't even call them insults. But fact is, those cuts hurt. You don't have the power to make it stop, and even the tiniest little things add up to something big, no matter how thick your skin gets. Those paper cuts still hurt. There's one story I will never ever forget. It was one of the typical after-work parties. I stood in a group of my colleagues from work, all male as always, and another co-worker walked up to us, interrupting the conversation by telling me this. I was stunned, speechless. I couldn't say a word. It was coming out of nowhere, and I couldn't speak. There was absolutely nothing I could say or do. That would have been legal anyway. What makes me angry now is the fact that looking back, nobody said something. Nobody. There were at least 6 other people in this room, and nothing about it being inappropriate was said. There were only never-ending, awkward silence. I know people thought it was inappropriate, because following this comment, some of my colleagues asked me, in private of course, what I've done to him to deserve this. Years went by, but my blood is still boiling just thinking about it. What depresses me the most is that I don't know what this kind of sexism would do to someone who had less self-confidence. So for me, remembering these situations, the answer is very clear. Yes, it is real. Sexism in tech is real. I hope at this point some of you ask themselves, what can we do to stop these paper cuts? My goal is to have a positive focus, and I would really love it if you walked away with at least one concrete goal for making constructive change at your workplace. Therefore, I'd like to share my 5-point plan of revolution with you. First of all, leaders, speak up and act in concrete ways. Set values and culture for your company. Make clear that you value diversity, and soon enough, others will follow in your footsteps. Speak out about discrimination. Proactively address this issue. How I try to do that? It helps me to consider that sometimes the person in question doesn't even know that what he or she said was out of line. Sometimes a small but concrete hint is just enough to make clear that this type of behavior isn't acceptable. Secondly, eliminate bias and stereotyping. Acknowledge that you have biases that conflict with your values. No. This doesn't make you a bad person. It is what we have been taught. It is in our culture. So what's more important is to be aware of them and find ways to eliminate them. How I try to do that? When selecting a project manager, for example, I strictly adhere to the concrete requirements of a project and do not let myself be guided by feelings or emotions. In concrete terms, I also include part-time employees in the selection process, if the project allows it. Okay, now you've heard from my experiences. But what are other women thinking about that? What have they experienced? I wanted to see if it is just in my head or if paper cuts truly are a widespread issue. So I reached out to them. And yes, they spoke up. They told their stories.
Just graduated, ready to start my career. Very often I heard the sentence, "Keep in mind, this job is nothing for a family."
I was standing in the office kitchen washing my coffee mug when my colleague came in and saw me and said, "No, that's convenient. A woman standing in the kitchen and I have dirty dishes."
He said, "If I knew IT support was so competent, I would have called earlier, sizing up me and my female colleague."
There was one guy I worked with who kept calling me princess because, and I quote, "You're just too girly."
It keeps on happening over and over again. Today, in our meeting, he said, "Thank you, gentlemen," ignoring that there were actually 2 women in the room.
When breaking these stories down, there's some overarching themes. They were talking about degrading behavior, including being interrupted and ignored. Some of them were highlighting outdated views of women and family life. Other ones were being condescending and patronizing. Women were talked down on in various situations. Most of my friends were dictated how they are supposed to act, behave, or dress in the eyes of male colleagues. And finally, and most disturbingly, there were a lot of stories about sexually inappropriate and harassing behavior. So, once again, considering these additional examples, I think we can agree. Yes, it is real. It's still real. And I at least would love to change this for my younger female colleagues, protect them from paper cuts. So I ask you to encourage and empower your co-workers, acknowledge your employees for their hard work, and let them be recognized for the value they contribute to the company, either male or female. Push them forward and give them credit. How I try to do that? I remember to toot my horn for somebody else on a regular basis. And in cases when somebody was either ignored or immediately shut down during a meeting, I repeat the idea, giving clear support and credit to its source. Another possibility is to be a mentor for young talents. Help them get started, as the entry barriers are hard sometimes. Listen to them, don't leave them to fight their battle alone. How I try to do that? While working with apprentices and young employees, I've established meetings for knowledge transfers. I'd love to give them room to ask and to learn. After coming to an understanding of this, I can tell you there are good news, but as well bad news. I will, of course, start with the good news. Change is possible. Women in tech are getting more awareness than some years ago. There are lots of initiatives going on to encourage women to make the step into tech. Unfortunately, there are bad news as well. Teaching more girls and women to code is not enough. Training women to negotiate better and be more assertive is also not enough to solve the problem. If tech culture is going to change, it means everyone needs to change, most especially leaders. But there must be done more than just preaching with warm words. Today's generation of tech leaders need to invest, create new opportunities, and think critically about how to fundamentally change this culture. So let me share my final thought on making change possible. I'd love you to create a culture that makes people want to stay. There are lots of possibilities here, like be compassionately honest. Don't make assumptions. Support each other to reach that goal. Treat others the way you wish to be treated. You still don't know what it takes to make women want to stay? Ask them. Just ask them. How I try to do that? If I know of women looking for work or a better job, I try to refer them when the opportunity arises. So, although I know many women with frustrating experiences of sexism, I also know women who have found companies where they're happily thriving. I'm glad for the attention tech's diversity problem has been receiving, and I'm full of hope for ongoing change. You know what the best part is? All of you can help me there, just by speaking up, eliminating biases, encouraging your co-workers, mentoring young talents, and creating an open-minded, affectionate, and thoughtful culture. So even if my message has only reached one of you today, who is willing to speak up in the next unfair situation, or tries to reach at least one goal, wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't it be great to speak up, be heard, do something, and make a change? Thank you very much.